Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join this Immersive Labs cyber crisis scenario out in the cold, or as I have named it, catchily, the cyber nightmare before Christmas. If this is your first time attending one of these sessions, it's my job, I suppose, to at least pre-warn you a little bit about what's about to happen. First of all, I'd like to introduce my two colleagues, Paul Bentham. You can say hello.
Hello.
And Kev Breen.
Hello.
Say hello. For context, Kev is like hyper techie, has massive amounts of experience in incident response and cybersecurity. Paul Bentham works at Immersive Labs.
I knew that was coming.
But the purpose of the exercise, because it is going to be an exercise this afternoon, is for us to go through a crisis scenario. Now, Kev and I have helped to write this scenario. I will be acting as the crisis master. That's how I've called myself. That's how I'm dubbing myself now. The crisis master. And Paul has not seen any of it. So he is coming into this crisis completely blind, which he thinks is bad, but we think gives him an excuse for being potentially rubbish at it. For Paul's benefit, you as the audience will be able to play along. So this is a kind of like a facilitated exercise, if you like. So hopefully you're seeing a displayed notification that shows a URL and a code. I'm just putting that up on the screen now. So underneath your video, you should be seeing a URL and a code. If you head over to that URL and put in that code, you will be able to play along with us as we move through this scenario. So Kev, I'm going to ask you to, you're in screen sharing, you're the screen sharing boss. So if you could share your screen and then we can...
And whilst Kev's doing that, it's really important that you all play along and join that through that code. So play.immersivelabs.online, and the exercise code is Foxtrot 58 Beta Beta 7. Because I need you. This is like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You are the audience, and I need you because honestly, most of the time I don't listen to these two. So if you're listening and voting at least, then that'll help me out.
I like that you think it's only most of the time you don't listen to us.
Okay, so the exercise is called, our scenario is called Left Out in the Cold. Now, as we go through the exercise, you will get an opportunity on that website that you've gone to using that code. You will get an opportunity to vote for what you think we should do next. It's a little bit like choose your own adventure, but for cybersecurity. So, Kev, if you want to click that start your exercise button, and I'm going to set the scene. Paul, get time to start feeling a little bit nervous.
I'm listening.
Okay. In early 2020, our company, Energon Power, ran a promotional campaign offering significant discounts to new customers over the age of 65. We increased our monthly revenue by 150%, and that 65 plus client base now accounts for over 45% of our total residential customers. Several months ago, we were hit by snake ransomware. Now, as a company, we paid 14.5 million in Bitcoin to a malicious group, and this action has been reported by the media. So it's out there. People know. A spokesperson for our company has stated that we paid this ransom in order to protect our customers' personal data to avoid a significant fine from the regulators. We feel satisfied with what we've achieved at this point, and we're ready to get back to work. Surely nothing else could possibly require our attention over the next week. So, as we said at the beginning, Paul will be acting as the CISO in this context. Kev will be acting as his kind of technical right arm. He could be the head of the CERT, or he could be some forensics guy, incident responder, but those are broadly the roles. Okay, so let's see what's the first thing that we have to deal with. So having dealt with a ransomware attack recently, the crisis management team meets post-incident. We want to agree on a formal corporate response strategy that outlines the priorities that we will have in a crisis situation. Two elements are decided: protecting data while taking a firm position on the payment of ransoms, which we will only do as a last resort. I just want to make sure, Paul, that you have understood. We will only pay ransoms as a last resort, and ensuring the continuity of our critical services. But which do we select? as our third priority. So, Kev, you can open the voting now, and we'll go through these options. The reason we opened the voting early is because there is a little bit of a delay on Bright Talk, so we just want to give you guys that are signed in as much time as possible to vote along as part of the exercise. Also, if you haven't yet logged in, you can see the URL and the exercise code are at the top there. Just pop them into your phone, into your browser, and you can play along with us. You can join in there at any time. So what are options here? Option 1, preserving our company reputation. You need the industry, investors, and customers to trust us. Option 2, ensuring the attack does not penetrate large corporate accounts. They're more important than the residential ones. Option 3, ensuring our confidential schematics are protected and there's no risk to power supplies. Or option 4, protecting customer health and well-being. Crises have impacts beyond our reputation. There are people who rely on us. So what do we think? Paul, what's your instinctive answer? And then we'll dig into it a bit.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, so I feel like I've been set up here as the person on the podcast or on the webinars previously. I'm like, just pay the ransomware. So yeah, I can see why this has been.
I did tell you that we wrote it, didn't I?
Yeah, I should have expected this. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'm the CISO. So there is some of this stuff that I'm not sure that's in my wheelhouse. So I'm looking at option 3. What was option 4 again?
Option 4 was prioritizing
health and well-being of our customers.
Well-being of our customers, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure I care about 4, and I'm not really sure I care about 1. So, well, as a CISO, that's where my instincts go. So I'm thinking, ensuring so 45% of my client base is now these 65 plus clients and their residents rather than the corporate account. So I think I'm erring towards 3 because that's my accountability, protecting my IP and ensuring those confidential schematics are protected and keeping the integrity of the operation. So that's where I'm at. Option 3.
Just ruled out the poor customers straight away. Let's reveal that. Let's reveal the responses. We've got let's just pause a second, Kev, just to make sure that we've got enough votes in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good enough number. Let's go for it. It is that delay, so I would encourage you to vote as early as. But none of the audience agreed with you, Paul. They all thought that.
Hang on, 7 agreed with me.
Okay, but it's not a majority, so it doesn't really count, does it? So now I suppose we have to decide what we're going to do. We're going to go with Are we going to do this? Are we going to follow what the audience tell us? Do you think, or should we choose ourselves? What were you going to go with? Option 3.
That's what I thought as CISO, but I'm just in the role of CISO. I mean, maybe there needs some balance here.
So I'm going to have to be I think in some cases I'm going to have to be the casting vote. So I'm going to be the casting vote, and I'm going to say that option 4, surely, is the right one. Anyway, let's see what the impact is. Okay, so this is a great answer. So that's good.
Awkward.
The majority picked the great answer. And just for a bit of context, what you're seeing now on the right-hand side of this screen is basically how the answer that we have given has impacted on a sort of series of parameters, like indicators. In this case, our share price, customer retention, and continuity of power supply. Obviously, as an energy company, is a big deal to us. So that's why that particular indicator is included. And as we move through the exercise, we will see these move. They're dynamic. So based on the answers that we will give, we could give an answer that will adversely affect our share price, perhaps, or has a direct impact on power supply or whatever, and we'll see that play out through the rest of the scenario. It's also important to mention that the scenario itself is dynamic, so the route that we choose is not linear. It can branch at any time, take us off in particular different directions. Just something to bear in mind as we move through the exercise. Okay, let's move to the next question.
Chris, just before you read this inject, there is a question which somebody's asked, which is whether isn't it illegal to pay the ransomware according to the FBI? And I think we haven't said in this setup how we paid it, but we do know that there's good examples recently where we're paying consultancy companies to repair the damage caused by ransomware, which isn't necessarily paying the ransom directly. So I think there are some companies that are working around that at this time.
Yes, that's true, and the reason that it's been made, although it seems a bit of a legal grey area, but the suggestion is that it's been made illegal because it is effectively funding terrorism. That is the rationale for not ransom, the paying of ransom being. I don't know. Is it illegal? Is it frowned upon? Anyway, they don't
Breaching
like it.
sanctions, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, that's right. You're breaching sanctions. I suppose if you're paying a foreign national a ransom, for example. Okay, so on to the next inject. So we've had a summary of the work that we're going to do post our ransomware attack. We're happy with our new response strategy and confident we won't need to use it for a while. However, we receive an email from the SOC lead indicating alerts of suspicious activity on a couple of our servers. It might be nothing, but senses are definitely heightened following initial analysis, as the SOC lead suspects a new type of ransomware, NetWalker, has been deployed on our systems, probably within the last 6 to 8 hours. Compounding this, you, Paul, are about to board a 10-hour flight following a meeting in the US. What should the rest of the crisis management team appoint in your place to help make decisions in your absence? These are the this is the initial assessment coming through from the SOC team. New ransomware family likely to encrypt data before it can be shut down in time. Potential data loss. Large ransom demand likely to follow. Like she says, could be nothing, but she's not paid to assume the best. So the options here.
I can't believe I'm still going to get on a plane in this situation. Oh no, okay, there you go. Option 2. Right, fine.
Let's open that voting, Kevin, then I'll go through the all of the options. So option 1, you delegate to your deputy. Option 2 is you cancel your flight and create a base of operations at your hotel. Option 3, a retired CISO who you've been working with as a consultant. Option 4, a member of the information security team. Option 5, no one. The crisis management team can make decisions collectively. Or option 6, the CEO.
I don't know whether this is just to me as a person, but there's no way on God's green earth that I'm getting on a 10-hour flight, when my SOC team's just told me that there's a ransomware about to detonate in my network, and I'm just going to sit on a plane eating peanuts for 10 hours and then land and go, I hope everything's okay. Like, that is not happening. Absolutely not happening. I'm not delegating up to the CEO. I'm not delegating to a deputy. I'm definitely not bringing in some rando consultant that has been playing golf for the last 6 years. I can't even remember what number 4 was. Oh, nobody. That doesn't seem right. I'm not getting on that flight, and I'm staying put. End of.
So you're going for the create the
base of operations. That's it. Yep.
I think it's safe to say you seemed very confident about that. About that answer. Let's just.
I don't even think there's a debate here. This isn't even a valid inject, in my opinion.
What about so what are you going to do if the Wi-Fi in the hotel is terrible?
Shout at a lot of people.
you have to hope you've got a dongle.
Well, I suppose I can then deputize later, right? So if I can't do it, then option 1, it would be my second choice.
Okay, let's have a look. I think, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer, but let's have a look and see. Oh, it's close. There were some people who felt that delegate. It's interesting. I mean, I'm saying, delegate to your deputy. They have completed the training, which, is there's an argument there for this. I also was going to ask, how many people who are listening to this are deputies to a CISO who are like, this is it. This is my moment. There's no way. There's no way I'm going to let them take control. If they're not here, I'm totally capable, confident, and able, to be in charge in that situation. So
I'd be the other way around. I'd be like, no, you take it. Yeah, you stay there. I am not deputizing for you. There's no way this is ending well.
Maybe I should have thought about my future job prospects. Maybe I should have said, sorry, I just got to get on this flight. It's really important.
Okay, so let's move forward then with that option. Okay, being struck by 2 different ransomware in a short amount of time is not an impossible situation. We do know that it happened to energy company Enel, whom this scenario is based on, back in October 2020. During a crisis, it's important to have clear leadership strategy in place with someone accountable for making decisions. Not filling that void left by an absent CISO would therefore be a poor decision. But as it says here, a deputy of the CISO is the strongest option. If it's not an assigned role, you should select another member of the senior management team. Okay, let's move.
Chris, why is my share price going down? That's what I can't go back now. Sorry, too late. But my share price, nobody knows, and nothing's happened. I haven't got on a plane.
You never know that nobody knows, which is, I think,
insider trading. Fantastic.
Yeah, and there is. So, I mean, recent events would tell us that strange things happen on the stock market when companies are at the center of cyber crises. That's as much as I'm saying. Google sunburst, solar winds. Just Google it. I mean, I'm not saying that anything nefarious has gone on. I'm just saying you should Google those words to see some references to slightly anomalous share trading, shall we say. Okay, it's been confirmed that our systems have been hit with Netwalker ransomware. We were unable to detect this because we were focused on the IOCs generated in the last incident and trying to ensure that attackers didn't regain access. The ransomware has encrypted some customer-facing web services before our IT department managed to shut it down. We do have a copy of the ransom note, and the attackers have also contacted us by email. At this point, so here we can see that they send us a very Kevin, just go back to that email. Send us a very polite email and complimenting us on our handling of our recent interaction with Snake, which I love, congratulating us for coughing up the money. And so now they themselves are asking us for money. Okay, let's.
I could see this. I could see where this is going as well. You're like, well, once you pay the ransomware, that makes you a bigger target.
So at this point, we're going to throw over to Kev, who in this imagined situation that we're in on the sort of technical and forensic side of things. We're going to go into one of these sort of hands-on labs inside Immersive Labs at this point. And Kev, perhaps just explain what we're about to see and how this kind of fits into the context of the scenario as a whole.
Yeah, so what we're doing here is, like Chris said, we're jumping into a practical environment. And very early on in the incident response process, when you come out to your SOC and say, like, Paul's going to ask me some very pointy questions. He's going to be like, is this the same ransomware? Is this new ransomware? Is it not just the old guys come back in? So I need to be able to get some very quick answers out. And if I was to go to a more traditional, like, full malware analysis, that's going to take a reasonable amount of time. So one of the things we have at our disposal as incident responders, especially when it comes to things like ransomware, is we have a really wide open source community that is sharing indicators of compromise. They're sharing reports. And what we can do is we can very quickly grab some samples from our compromised server. We can extract some basic information from them, and then we can go to the open source community. We can start to look and identify if somebody else has seen this. And what that can do is that can save me significant amounts of time and allow me to focus so I can get Paul the right answers in a very short amount of time. So that's what we're going to do here. So the lab gives you lots of background on why this is important, where you can go. We're going to focus on just the doing part for this. So in this example, I've got my analysis environment. I've connected to that compromised server, the one we first saw that alerted us to the fact. I've done some very basic investigation, identified there's a couple of files that don't look familiar to me, and I've copied them to my analysis machine. So I'm going to use some very standard Linux tools to start me with. So desktop, and I'm just going to SHA-256. The first file I found. So what this is doing is it's generating a unique hash, a unique identification for this specific file. This is going to be unique for this. Historically, we used to use something called an MD5 sum. They're no longer considered cryptographically sound, so we use SHA-256 or SHA-512. what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to come over to VirusTotal. VirusTotal is a free service. It's actually a part of the Google group, and it is a massive collection of malware, some non-malware. And what they do is you can submit it to VirusTotal, or they just collect it themselves, and they will run a load of analysis against those files. And all of these reports are public. There are paid versions of VirusTotal where you can get even deeper, richer information. But the free version, as we can see here, I put that file hash in, and very quickly I've got some information back. Very quickly, I can see that the community of virus scanners, of AV vendors, have said this is bad. 30 out of 60. And as I look down here, I can see there are some that don't detect it, and there are some where they can't process this file type. But very quickly, this is looking bad. I can now pivot across a couple of different areas. So I can see there is somebody has put a tag in here, and they've said that this is probably Netwalker, and they've said that this dropper actually drops this sample. So again, I can now just pivot, just clear that out. Probably could have done that quicker, but I've committed. I can paste in my new sample, and I can see here this file name matches the file name that I saw that I pulled from my sample. And if I start to get into the details of this and look at the relationships, I can see that this does in fact appear to be ransomware, and specifically Netwalker. It tells me that there are some Yara signature matches which seem to match this, and those Yara signatures are also public. So what I can do is I can go and grab a copy of that Yara rule, and I can run that sample against my samples. And again, so the Yara rule, this one specifically, I think was shared by McAfee in one of their public reports, and this matches that sample. So I can say with a reasonable degree of confidence that this is Netwalker ransomware, and I can see the dropper, I can see the actions, and now I can start to follow more of those reports and find out exactly what secondary actions, if there's any follow-up, if there's any additional compromise, which means when Paul asks me some very pointy questions in a minute, within a couple of minutes, I've got some immediate responses for him. Other work will continue. I'm going to do a deeper dive into the malware. I'm going to confirm things in a bit more detail. But when he comes to me right at the beginning of this incident, I've got some very quick answers for him.
Thanks, Kev. So we're going to ask to be. I'm going to ask. It's going to ask us now to make choices. So let's have a look and see. Right. So this looks like a priority setting. Then, Paul, Kev, if you want to open that voting. So option 1, assess the severity of the threat, which is kind of, I suppose, directly related to what Kev was saying there. This will need to be done at an operational and strategic level. Option 2, agreeing on strategic response objectives. How are we going to respond to this information should be the focus, or we can ask the ransomware operators for more information. So, Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I suppose like in this scenario, I've had the conversation with Kev where I've said, Kev, is this those snake lot again on our systems? And you say,
no.
So it's a new threat. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
New to us, yeah.
New to us. And I mean, this is a standard. We're now in a ground zero on a new ransomware. I've hopefully just gone through the playbook on this with the snake incident, so I know what mistakes we made last time, and I've learned from those because I've practiced or I've drilled them. We've had the retrospective, however we're doing that in my company. So it feels to me like the standard first step is I need to look at the severity, like what's going on, what's been encrypted. Am I unplugging systems at this point? Whether agreeing on the strategic response doesn't feel action orientated enough for me. And then talking to the ransomware operators probably feels like second or third.
Yeah, I think it would always feel to me like it's definitely a choice between option 1 and option 2. I guess I would say, can you do option 1 without having done option 2? Is that even possible? Can we assess the severity of the threat without having taken time to understand how we will deal with the information that we have in front of us? Is, I think, the question that needs answering, because it instinctively I would have gone for option 1 initially, because it has the words like severity of the threat in it, and it makes you feel as though, well, that's definitely what we should do. But actually, it may be that taking a step back, potentially consulting the incident response plan at this point, and saying, what does it look, what the direction does it look we should be going in here, perhaps before we get to option 1. As always with these scenarios, there aren't right or wrong answers. It's just interesting that, some of the biases that are attached to words, it can put doubt in your mind a bit. Should we have a look and see what the
I think we need
what
the
the
audience,
has
don't
to
we?
say?
Boom, with me, action orientated. Let's go.
Okay, so let's go with option 1 then, Kev.
Is this a bad answer? It's a great answer. Yes.
So yeah, the crisis team obviously has several moving parts to consider. We need to build situational awareness, like all of those things that are part of crisis response. So let's move to the next inject. So at this point, the head of IT comes to us and says, we've set priorities, but we still don't have any idea how severe this incident is. We don't know if we've lost customer data. We don't know if they can follow through on the threats in the ransomware demand. We haven't done the basic thinking of assessing the severity of this threat. And it's a fair point. We have agreed that we now need to assess the severity posed by the ransomware based on the information that we have received thus far. We should consider factors of their capability, their credibility, and their targeting. So let's take a look at what our options are. So based on what we have seen up to now, and actually this is, I guess, will be an important place for Kev to be brought into this conversation, having done that initial analysis and what we understand about NetWalker as a threat. Kev, let's give us your initial read, and then maybe Paul, you and I will have questions about what that really means to us as a business.
Yeah, so the initial read. So once I've confirmed that this is NetWalker ransomware, as in the security team, once I've made that confirmation, then I'm going out to the IT departments and the operators, the DevOps and the SecOps, and saying, all right, so this is NetWalker ransomware. Like, it has been running on our systems. Like, what's been impacted? And they're going to feed back to me a list. And I'm going to be hoping and praying that that's a really small list. In reality, if this thing ran for any more than like half an hour, that list is probably going to be significant. So they're going to come back to me and say, this is what data was impacted. And I think that's what I'm going to be using to make my assessment back to Paul. And I'm going to say, okay, so in this instance, this specific ransomware in its location encrypted a couple of customer databases, but it didn't impact the wider organization. So all of our staff, their devices, their file shares, all of that stuff's still on board, but there's definitely a customer impact. And it is incredibly likely that they have stolen that data before they exfiltrated it. Based on what we know about NetWalker, what investigation I've been able to run at this point, because we're still fairly early on, we're only a couple of hours deep, but I can be reasonably confident that customer data has gone and is definitely impacted right now.
I think the first question
that feels a bit like the tipping point. I mean, those last 2 points feel a bit like the tipping point, but I don't know, Paul, what do you think?
Well, the first question for me, so you've answered the first question. So NetWalker are the kind of group that will get not just encrypt my data and ransom me to unencrypt it, but to take it as well. So they've got form for that then, Kev.
They have indeed. Historically, they've seen it. At this point, we're still trying to confirm ourselves, like what, if anything, and how much has been exfiltrated. But based on the open source intelligence, the shared community reporting around this group, which we have confirmed, we know that they do this as a second stage trying to force the ransom.
So then the next question I've got is what's our backup DR kind of situation? How, let's split those two problems in half. Like, our data's encrypted, services are offline, and the data's probably gone. Let's face facts. But in terms of getting services restored, what's our situation with backups?
So we would so we've got to remember this is the second time we've gone through this. It's not more than a couple of months ago we were hit with this. So we will have identified what we call our recovery point objective and our recovery time objective as part of that disaster recovery. We might not have implemented all of those things. If we had to pay the ransom, it was likely that we didn't have a good backup strategy or our recovery point objective was too far in front of us. And with only a couple of months, I think it is incredibly unlikely that we would have moved ourselves significantly forward. So we now have a better backup strategy for having something like an offsite backup. However, that recovery time, that recovery point objective, it still means that when we recover from backups, we are going to lose several days worth of data, depending on how long before we make the decision to roll back.
Chris, I don't know what your thoughts are here, but I mean, I've lost control of my network or my security. I've lost control of my data. I mean, is there anything that says that this is anything other than high?
So the minute I heard, customer data and then customer systems, I was thinking high, and I think that that has always felt like the tipping point for me. Like I said, I think you could have had this conversation and it been, it's affecting servers, but it looks like it's localized, or, et cetera, et cetera. But I think because of their MO as, data exfiltration as well as encryption, that raises the stakes, for us, from the point of view of both the severity of the incident and the potential ramifications. So I can only agree. I'm sure the audience will also. So let's have a look.
The last thing in mitigation, yeah, I thought they would. But the last thing in mitigation is NetWalker is only open source decoders for it, decryptors.
There are not. This is using solid crypto routines. So unless the attackers release their keys, we are unlikely to be able to recover this.
Looks like I'm getting my. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say we're encrypted with unique encryption to us as an organization. Is that right?
Yeah. So, so we're using, the attackers are using public-private key encryption, which means there's nothing anywhere on our systems that mean we could recover that, unless we were really, really lucky and managed to get a memory snapshot at the exact time things were being encrypted. Sadly, that is very, very rare.
It doesn't seem your lot are that competent at that.
I was waiting till the punches started rolling.
Well, yeah, it's because now I'm looking down the barrel of a P45, aren't I? Or a resignation letter, and having to get my checkbook out for the ransom lot a second time. So I'm definitely going to start blaming the blue team for this.
Scans the broom for a scapegoat, like every good. Okay, let's show the impact of that. Okay, yeah, pretty good. So let's move on to our next question. So it's apparent this crisis is not going to be resolved quickly. Energon may be in response mode for days or even weeks before it can move towards a full recovery. How do you plan a crisis management team capacity around this problem, ensuring everyone is available when needed, but also is able to get enough rest? Let's reveal those options. Okay, so option 1, ask your teams to design a shift system for the crisis management team. Ask people to work overtime and they'll get time back in lieu, or bring in whatever other resources and capacity are required from elsewhere in the business. You just need to weather the crisis using whatever you have.
Oh dear, this is another Hobson's choice, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how long ago the snake situation was, but I hope during the snake situation we didn't go with option 2, that people have been working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, and then we've been hit again in quick succession. I'm a big believer of not sprinting all the time, because you're going to start making bad decisions when you're tired, when you're exhausted. So I'm looking towards option 1 or 3, instinctively.
2 months ago, for reference, it was only 2 months ago we were hit by the first round of ransomware.
And did we? And presumably it took us some time. So 2 months ago was when we got hit. So recovered by, let's say, a month ago. So it's in pretty short memory.
Yeah. Oh, and in that instance, we paid the ransom to get the recovery keys. So arguably, recovery may have been quicker in that instance because we had the decryption keys.
Which we
Yeah.
have decided not to do again. I don't know if you were aware.
Yeah, I was wondering when I was going to get the option just to pay the ransomware and get out of here. What is that not? What? Okay, well, look, on this particular one, I think recovering from a situation like this when we're not paying the ransomware, which frankly sounds like a bad idea, means that we're going to have to bring in, I think I'm going to look toward bringing in other resources. I mean, I think shift teams is fine, but it's not just my team. It's not just crisis management. I'm now going to have to get engineers. We're going to be rebuilding from backups, or from even from source, maybe burning things, having to buy new equipment depending on how bad this stuff is. Like, feels like it's going to need a company-wide response as we're going the hard route rather than the easy route.
Yeah, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we have literally just moved on from rating this as being of high severity. It doesn't feel like bringing in other resources from across the business is an unreasonable or kind of unnecessary thing to do. We have decided that it was high severity, and surely we have to do that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, the one thing we're not doing is just doing overtime. That's just never going to solve the problem. And I think it's not just crisis management team that need it. I don't know what the audience are thinking, but I'm definitely leaning towards 3. Ooh.
Yeah, it was close, but it's always interesting in these crisis scenarios when you realize that it's just the way that people's brains work differently. So there are many people who will be listening who will be thinking, and it's, again, no right or wrong answers. You need a process. They're thinking the best way to address this challenge that you're facing, and the decision that you need to make at that moment, is to define a process that will mean it's repeatable and it doesn't involve extra energy and effort. So those 12 people are most likely process orientated people who have lent towards that option, which I always find fascinating about these things. But anyway, the majority has gone for option 3, so we are going to go with that.
I guess the thing about option 3, was any a good one? I guess the thing about option 3 is a bit like, kids chasing the same football or soccer ball around the pitch, isn't it? Rather than the kind of more coordinated, structured response of a shift pattern.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at the next.
I think nobody'd ever employ me as a CISO, frankly. I think that's the...
Okay, so reports are arriving from customers experiencing issues with our service. Unfortunately, these reports don't have a common pattern. Some customers are complaining about the power outage. Others say they have issues with the top-up system. At this stage, we really don't know how the ransomware is affecting our system infrastructure. We are also at risk of missing that strategic objective to guarantee service continuity to our customers. And that's really important because December 17th, it's pretty cold outside. So ensuring that those customers have electricity supply is obviously really important. And here are some screen grabs from social media that we're seeing people complaining about either their power going out or their elderly mothers had a power cut in this context. But we are actually struggling to get a handle on whether what we're seeing here is a pattern and this impact is being created by the attack, or if it's just business as usual. So what should we do then at this point? Do we prioritize finding the root cause? Do we prioritize providing top-ups to those without power? Do we release a holding statement, or do we ensure ample power supply is available in affected areas?
Wow. Oh, this has got serious, hasn't it?
In the corner. Yeah.
I wish we prioritised my idea back at option 1. Maybe we wouldn't begin this mess. Right. So I like option 4 feels like the obvious option to me. So like this is the kind of high level hand wavy stuff I would normally say. Like, hey, we just need to prioritize giving power to the people. Which sounds like a great statement, like a proper truism. But probably everybody would be like, yeah, obviously that's our job. But we've got a ransomware attack, so maybe we need to go and find out what the root cause is of this disruption. I don't know what you're thinking there.
This I think is a wicked problem, because so a wicked problem is kind of like where you have options but none of them necessarily seem good. Option 1 feels right tactically. Like, we need to understand what systems are being affected that could result in this in order for us to make a decision to move forward. However, we also know that every moment that passes and people are without power adds risk. So option 2 then starts to look more attractive. But we could providing top-ups. We could prioritize providing top-ups, but then be so focused on that that we get that up and running and then it gets reinfected, for example, because we never did option 1. So there isn't an easy way to necessarily rationalize this. We have to go with what we think is likely to have the best or the most optimal outcome at this point. And I think back to I think you were headed here anyway, but it feels to me like that would be option 1.
You're also going to be getting a couple of different people shouting at you. So me in the SOC or in the IT department, I'm going to be saying, I need to find what the root cause is. Like, that's got to be the biggest priority. You're going to have those in customer support and in marketing teams, PR teams saying, hey, we've got to say something really quickly. It's already out there. So you're going to be getting a lot of barrage from a lot of different people, all of them saying that they're each important in their own way.
I think at this stage, though, the crisis management team investing energy in crafting holding statements for the media when they haven't yet necessarily been asked for it just doesn't make any sense. I think you can take that off the table. I think you can take that off the table straight away. In a way, the choice that we're being asked to make is also we don't have the data at this point to know if it is the top-up system or if it is something else, and so therefore, yeah, we're in a sticky spot. And as someone has quite just said in the question, like, all these options seem correct, and that's why it's a wicked problem, because all these options could, in certain contexts, be correct. We can only work with the available information that we have, and again, there are no right or wrong answers. So we are just going to have to go with our instinct, I think.
So, I mean, the thing for me, what's really interesting about this is that option 2 could have been like, I think option 2 was a bit of a red herring in here as well. It's good to see the audience didn't pick it either. Like, the idea that because people are having trouble with top-ups, then let's go, all jump on the top-up problem. I'd love to have gone with option 4, which is what the audience said, is like, make sure people have got the power.
My problem with option 4 has always been that I don't think it's tactical enough. I think you'll just end up with this question again because you don't really know. So I'm casting my vote, and I'm going to say it was so close. We'll go 1.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right option. Oh dear, my poor power supply's fallen off a cliff though.
Yes, because of course we knew that people were having problems with their power. Okay, next.
It's my only job to make sure there's power.
The technical team get to work understanding how your systems are failing to meet customer needs. They confirm that the problem is the top-up system. As time passes, more customers are running out of power and unable to top up. The server responsible remains encrypted. What will we do now?
I'm hoping.
I'm sorry.
So I was going to open the vote, but I'm just going to explain. So just in case people aren't aware, so this is a real problem that actually hit a real energy company. Most people may be used to like paying for electricity on demand. So I direct debit or equivalent and something comes through. But especially for a lot of vulnerable people, they have a top-up system. So it's a key where I go to a shop, I have that key loaded. With credits, I take that to my meter, I plug it into my meter, and that's how I get electricity. And what was happening, and what we've said in this environment, is that top-up system where people can go and apply credits is encrypted, which means nobody can actually top up those keys, which means our supply is fine, but customers can't top up their meters, which means they actually can't get electricity into their house because they're out of credit. And that's the system that's been infected.
I can't read option 4. What's option 4?
Do not pay the ransom. Prioritize getting the top-up system back online.
Okay, so what's interesting about this is, before you reveal the options, my first instinct, and I'm guessing this wasn't technically viable, Kev, in the real world example of this, and I guess you will therefore tell me it's not technically viable in this example, is I would have given free electricity to all the people affected. That would have been my first choice on this.
So the problem is, so those top up, so like I said, so what you have is you have a physical key which you take to a shop. They will load that key, you take it back and plug it into your meter. Those meters are decentralized, so we've got no way of controlling them. So what we would have to do is we would have to issue almost like a blanket announcement to all shops and some kind of system in place that says, hey, just load them. We'd have no control over that. We couldn't do anything with that. So at this point, we wouldn't have anything in place that actually enabled that because those meters are decentralized.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I mean, you know where I'm going to go with this. Like, I've got effectively, I've got a threat to life situation. I don't feel that confident that we're going to get anywhere with trying to decrypt this. You answers earlier said our backup strategy was kind of probably quite broken. Comms isn't going to turn people's heating back on and turn the lights back on in their house. I'd say any of options 2, 3, and 4 don't work. Well, I'm getting my checkbook out.
So don't forget that at the beginning of the exercise, we said that one of our strategic priorities was not paying ransoms. We're already $14.5 million down from the last time that we did that. So I think that's, so I understand your rationale, but let's also think about what is involved with paying that ransom, because it's not just paying it and then assuming that because we paid it everything then immediately comes back online. There is still a kind of tail, if you like, to a timeline that we'll still need to go through in order to, even once we paid the ransom, in order to be able to get back online. So it's never as straightforward as that.
So just read out to me option 4 again. Sorry, I think it's probably option 4 that I'm leaning towards there if we can't pay the ransom.
Do not pay the ransom. Prioritize getting the top-up system back online.
Yeah, that's where I'd go. So if it's a top-up system problem, then we've got to top up that. I'm not doing comms. Data logs and recovery of backup files. Maybe that's a sub option to option 4.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it would have to be either option 3 or option 4. But again, this is a challenging question because let's reveal the answer, shall we, Kev? We've got 31 votes in, so let's take a look and see. Oh,
come on.
Everyone has gone. What I think is interesting, though, about that is that we have of course identified that is the root cause, which means that we could go and fix that. We could go and restore that single system, but we have no idea what the potential might be for that to be reinfected instantaneously. So that is why the choice between option 3 and option 4, I think, is actually more difficult than perhaps just prioritizing the online, prioritizing the top-up system. But anyway, let's see what we get. And again, this, as I said, is one of those wicked problems. A wicked problem presents a choice between a series of bad options or options which are likely to trigger secondary consequences or negative impacts. And it's these kinds of questions that add a layer of complexity. But the point is that we have to do something. So it's all about making those rational and defensible decisions in any crisis situation. It actually does say paying or not paying the ransom are both valid options here. So there you are. Bit of reassurance for you there, Paul. Okay, despite the earlier decisions made by the crisis management team, the heads of IT and data protect, they've banded together. They're still extremely anxious about the choice not to simply pay the ransom demand, especially with the issues surrounding customers not having access to power, inflicting more financial damage over time. is the head of IT. Listen, everyone, we discussed the ransom, but I'm not sure Jack and I share your views. We just want a quick exit from this, and paying the ransom seems to offer us that. The following risks should be considered when entertaining an extortion payment. Which would you prioritize to support your argument not to pay?
What?
Don't forget, that's
I'm
what you
with
chose.
Jack. Oh yeah, audience
So what
pressured me
are
into it. Didn't
so what are our the risks that we think we should consider? In this case, we're prioritizing, okay? And I think so. For someone asked earlier, oh, all these answers look right. You know, why can't we choose? Why can't we choose all of them? And I think this is what happens now. We're going to basically choose. We're going to set priorities effectively now. We're going to prioritize these risks. So what do we think is the most important risk to consider if we were going to pay? So is it that we have no insurance cover? Our insurance may not cover the costs a second time around, leaving us to foot the entire bill. A repeat attack, we're already perceived as a soft target. We need to take a stand to reset this. Bad reputation, we are already in the public eye for the wrong reasons. How would we recover our reputation after 2 ransom payouts in a week? Option 4, failed restoration. Is it possible that our data will not be recovered from provided decryption keys, or the legal issues? Do we understand that funding crime is illegal in all jurisdictions we operate in? Do we know if paying the ransom is legally viable?
So here's an interesting thing for me at this point, right? So I can totally understand if a company has taken an ethical position that funding terrorism is a bad idea, or funding criminality is a bad idea. So option 5 would probably seem like the strongest argument in a company that's already has got that as a core part of its ethical policy towards these situations. I guess, are we hypothesizing that having spent $14.5 million on a professional services to restore service after a ransomware incident, we've changed our policy?
Well, that's pretty clear from the beginning of the scenario, isn't it?
That we have changed our policy. So then surely then legal issues is the kind of probably the most, ruling out the other ones. Bad reputation is we're going to be like, our reputation is going to be worse if we don't have any power. Like repeat attack, I guess, is probably that's provedly true, isn't it? Insurance cover, I guess, that's a cash flow situation. The failed restoration, I think we probably would have confidence that the restoration would be successful, because we've just gone through that, and so we'd have confidence in that. I think the one area where I would feel that I'd have the strongest is we've made a decision. The decision was we don't pay ransomware again. We can't just be like a chocolate teapot on this when we're faced with a new situation again. That's exactly the reason why we made this decision, and presumably that decision was made at the most senior levels in the organization.
And we could also assume that it was made for reasons that involved the legality of
exactly
making those payments. Okay, so it feels like you're saying option 5.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Should we just see what the audience has to say there? Oh, yeah, like the split between the two. Okay, Kev, let's go to the next one, because I think we have to basically create our priority list now from memory. Oh no, maybe that comes later.
We went ahead, I think.
Comes later. Okay, so the decision to not pay the ransom means your IT team, tasked with recovering the electricity top-up systems, begin the arduous process of restoration from backups. The very next day, harrowing news transpires involving the death of a vulnerable person. With no heating resources available and home telephone equipment rendered useless during the power outage, this elderly man died through the night, which saw record freezing temperatures. The news reports link the death to our organization's inability to supply power. This has obviously led to outrage online as angry customers spread these articles on social media. Our team prioritized customer well-being, so we have a record of all the actions we took to avoid a tragedy such as this. With the inability to access power impacting a significant proportion of customers, public opinion is turning against us. Our marketing department needs to know what action we should prioritize. So here we can see some of the social media as well as the news reports discussing this unfortunate incident, and let's have a look and see what the available options are to us at this point. And again, this is done on priority. So let's open that voting and I'll go through the options. A lot of options here. So option 1, do we release a holding statement? We need to provide a statement, but we shouldn't be too hasty in divulging more than the known facts. Option 2, reply to social media comments. Our public image is key. Option 3, wait for further information. We cannot confirm our involvement. We should wait for further information before going public. Option 4, a factual statement. Provide a well-informed statement that should help customers understand the difficulties we're working through. An apologetic statement. The key to restoring our reputation is to take responsibility, and we should send condolences to the family and anyone affected. Or option 6, offer compensation.
Yeah, I mean, I would be absolutely raging at this point, having been overruled on paying the ransomware. And given that we used the known risk of prioritizing our customers, we didn't. I mean, like frankly, we could have paid the ransomware. It's only our own ethics that prevented us from doing that, and has resulted in the death of a person, which is a horrendous situation to be in. I think, given that we are where we are, looking at these options. Holding statements, social media replying, waiting for further information, they all feel just insufficient in this situation. But I sort of start to now worry. Now I'm getting my legal kind of worry wart on. This is one person. Were there more? Do we get a class action lawsuit against us? What's the limit of the liability we're facing here? And if we start doing sort of accepting liability, accepting responsibility, etc., like, it's heartless and it's inhumane, but maybe option 4 is the safe option rather than option 5. Certainly offering compensation, that's a bit premature, I think. So I'm erring towards 4 as a executive of an organization with responsibility for my shareholders, etc., although my human side would want to do option 5.
Yeah, I think also option 1 and option 4. So option 1 is the holding statement, and option 4, the factual statement. They actually feel very similar. Not being too hasty in divulging more than just the facts. We could release a statement, a factual statement that kind of very clearly said, these issues with top-up systems where some customers have been unable to get access to power are as the result of an ongoing cyber attack. I feel is probably the way to go. I might also think about that factual statement, including the name of that ransomware and the group involved, because we've seen historically that where threats to life come into play, those groups are often ready to decrypt for free. So we, it may be that releasing that factual statement along with actually calling them out and saying this could be brought to an end by your behaving like human beings, I think is also a kind of turning their PR on them, if you like, could be another thing that we could do.
Yeah. Chris, have we got less than 1 minute on this?
No, I think we can keep. I think we can keep going.
Okay,
it doesn't.
okay.
Yeah.
Factual statement. There we go.
Yeah. So option 4. It's kind of obvious, I suppose, but I quite like the idea of turning their own PR on them. I like that. Okay, what's next? So news of the customer fatality has spread like wildfire. Power remains out for those unable to top up their balance. And some customers are now on their 3rd day without electricity. In the last 5 hours, upwards of 5,000 customers have requested cancellation of their electricity supply. So let's take a look at these priorities now that we're being asked to set.
So we're going to select 3 of these in turn. So
yeah, so we need to probably rattle through these quite quickly. So option 1, use spare capacity in the sales team to establish a dedicated customer retention line. Focus on re-establishing supply. Instruct managers to check in on employee welfare. Declare the fatality requires further investigation. Liaise with next of kin. or refocus our response strategy on revenue generation by launching a sales and marketing campaign?
Oh dear. This is, yeah.
I mean, instinctively, option 4, which is declare that the fatality requires further investigation, feels the most obvious way to buy us a bit of time.
Option 2. Option 2 is about. I don't know whether we should. Oh, this is so hard.
Don't forget, we have a chance to do. We have a chance to do a few of these. We have a chance to do a few of these. So let's think in terms of priorities. So maybe you're right. Maybe 2 is the bet. 2 is the highest priority.
I want to stem the. I don't want 3 days without electricity. Dear, oh dear, that's a long time. Like, let's sort out. Let's get the electricity back in. I think 2, 4, 5 probably. Like, I don't know that declaring it feels a bit outside of my remit, but maybe trying to at least be nice to these people that we've, definitely not 6, of course. Option 1 feels wrong as well. 3 probably. So 2, 4, 3. And 3.
2, 4, and 3. Okay, Kev. Let's see what the.
Sorry. 2, 5, and 3. 2, 5, and 3. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
2, 5, and 3.
Let's see whether the audience agree with the 2. No one else went for 5. Interesting.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through. So I'm just going to open and close the voting, just so we can move through.
Yeah, we'll move through those in that order, and then we're actually coming towards the end of our time. So,
second was 5.
Yeah, and then 3.
Oh,
sorry, I went 1 click too far. Apologies.
So, reports from our recovery teams indicate that the immediate threat has now been contained. Systems are back up to a reasonable capacity and climbing as our PR teams handle the unending backlog of customer complaints and media attention. All customers have been emailed asking them to update their login details and passwords. With the focus on reputational recovery, the CEO is holding a post-incident press conference and wants us and the rest of the team to define our priorities while navigating this crisis. The team draws up a report outlining 4 key areas for improvement. Which of these lessons learned would you consider your top strategic priority when making decisions throughout the crisis? So let's see the options, Kevin. Let's open that voting for this last one. So would it be technical or an operational? System integrity is paramount to incident prevention. Would it be procedural? Tried and tested plans need to be ready for such a crisis. Would it be human? A prepared and supported team is the defender of your organization. Or would it be 4, reputational? Our customers and community need special attention. So again, there aren't really right or wrong answers here. This is just us probably really going through and rationalizing where we might put the weighting in terms of what we learn at the end of this exercise.
This is a really interesting one, isn't it? Of course, you've got to go towards 1 straight off because you're like, well, if this hadn't happened in the first place, then. But we see what's happened with the SolarWinds situation this week, where you can be, doesn't matter how good your defenses are, if you're a customer of SolarWinds, you'd have been compromised anyway. So then, and I'm not going to say procedural because I'm not a process kind of person, as we'd have established through this webinar. So I'm really leaning towards human because, of course, if I've got my team already prepared and so on, then they're going to definitely act in the right instance. And maybe, frankly, I'd have been sitting on a plane shipping champagne and eating peanuts whilst this was all kicking off.
Yeah. But then, yeah, I mean, it's
what's
difficult,
option 4?
isn't it? Option 4 is
reputational.
But I think reputation actually in this context is not, like it says, the summary says our customers and community need special attention. Do you remember right at the beginning of the scenario, we identified that we had, a large percentage of our customers are older older persons. So, you know, maybe that was a thing that we should have had more more view of, more visibility into, you know, as we were going through the exercise. I'm not sure.
It's a really tricky one, but
Yeah.
I think reputation. You know, we see companies get hit, their reputation's back within a day. The news cycle forgets that Garmin were down for days on end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Three.
Okay. So let's see whether the audience.
Oh,
To split.
balance. There we go.
Yeah. So, and I guess that's exactly what you would expect, given that, as I said, this is all to do with how any particular organization decides to prioritize the choices that it's going to make in the event of a crisis. Okay. And you'll be pleased to know, Paul, that brings us to an end. Just to pick up on a couple of questions in the chat here. So someone asked about, are there real world examples of the threat actor offering to help for free, or basically the decryption for free? Yes, we saw that recently. There was a hospital in Germany that was impacted by ransomware, and somebody basically couldn't be admitted by the hospital and went on to sadly die. And the threat actor did agree, you know, quite quickly actually agreed in that context to provide that decryption for free. So it does happen. There are occasional glimpses of humanity. Someone else has pointed out that the comms options at early junctures perhaps shouldn't have been dismissed so readily, because had customers been informed of the difficulties the customers were having, they might have been able to make alternative arrangements. I think that's very insightful, actually. And again, it's by virtue of the fact that we're three cyber security guys, you know, running through this exercise. But I'm sure if we'd have had comms people or HR person, there would have been, you know, potentially quite different outcomes as we moved through that exercise. We are over our time, so I'm going to bring things to a close here. Kev, thank you. Paul, thank you, and most of all, thanks to all of our attendees, everyone who voted along, for giving up some of your time today to take part in this event, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.